this video, we will go over the distance formula, the midpoint formula, and the slope formula. And the equation for the distance formula is d equals x of 2 minus x of 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared, all under a square root sign. And the midpoint formula is x of 1 plus x of 2 over 2, comma y sub 1 plus y sub 2 over 2. And the slope formula is m equals y sub 1 minus y sub 2 over x of 1 minus x of 1. Find the distance between points 2, 4, and 4, 7. The possible answer choices are a square root of 6, b 4, c square root of 10, and d square root of 4. You can pause the video here if you need some time to solve it. Okay, so to start off, you would write the distance formula, and you would plug in, for x of 2, you'd plug in 4, x of 1, you'd plug in 2, y sub 2, you would plug in 7, and y sub 1, you would plug in the 4 here. And you would square that, and you would square that, and you would do 4 minus 2 for 2, 7 minus 4 for 3, and you'd square both of those, and you get 4 plus 6, and then all you have to do is add that, and you get the square root of 10, which would be answer C. So question 2, find the distance between points 1, 4 and negative 2, 1. The possible answer choices are a square root of 16, b square root of 18, c 10, and d square root of 10. You can pause the video here if you need time to solve it. So to start off, you would do the distance formula again, and you would plug in negative 2 for x of 2, negative 1 for x of 1, 1 for y sub 2, and 4 for y sub 1. And the signs would stay negative. And then you would solve this by doing negative 2 minus 1 for negative 3, 1 minus 4 for negative 3. And then you would square both of those, and you would get 9 for both. And you just add the 2 9s, and you get square root of 18, which would be choice B. Question 3. Find the distance between points 0, 2, and 3, 1. You can pause the video here if you need some time to solve it. Alright, so we'd start off by writing the distance formula again. And for x of 2, you would plug in 3. X of 1, you'd plug in the 0. Y sub 2, you'd plug in the 1. And y sub 1, you'd plug in the 2. And the next, you would have to do 3 minus 0 for 3, and 1 minus 2 for negative 1. And then next you'd square both of these for 9 and positive 1. And then you'd add those together for 10, and then you'd have the square root of 10. Now we'll do some practice with the midpoint formula. So for question 4, find the midpoint between points 3, 7, and 0, 1. Possible answer choices are a 3 over 2, comma 4, b 4, comma 3 over 2, c 1 over 4, comma 3 over 2, d 1 over 2, comma 2 over 3. You can pause the video here if you need time to solve it. Alright, so first you have to write down the midpoint formula, which is right there. And for x of 1, you would plug in the 3. X of 2, you'd plug in the 0. Y sub 1, you'd plug in the 7. And then y sub 2, you'd plug in the 1. So then you get 3 plus 0 divided by 2, comma 7 plus 1 over 2. And then it's just some basic math there for the 3 plus 0 and the 7 plus 1. You get 3 and then 8. And then you're left with 3 over 2, comma 8 over 2. And you can simplify the 8 over 2 to get 4. And you end up with 3 over 2, comma 4, which would be answer A. 5. Find the midpoint between points 5, 4, and 7, 8. There are no answer choices given, so you have to find this one on your own. You can pause the video here if you need time to solve it. Alright, so again, we start off with the midpoint formula, and then you'd plug in 5 for x of 1, and then for x of 2, you'd plug in 7, y sub 1, you'd plug in the 4, y sub 2, you'd plug in the 8. And the next step would be adding the 5 and the 7, which would give you 12, and then adding the 4 and the 8, which would give you 12 again. So then you're left with 12 over 2, comma 12 over 2. And both of those would simplify to 6 and 6. So you're left with 6, comma 6. Find the midpoint between points 7, 1 and negative 3, negative 2. You can pause the video here if you need time to solve it. Alright, so you'd start off by writing out the midpoint formula again, and for x of 1, you'd plug in 7, x of 2, you'd plug in negative 3, and make sure to remember that's a negative 3, otherwise you might get your signs mixed up. And for y sub 1, plug in the 1, y sub 2, negative 2, remember to make sure that one's negative. So then do some math and add 7 plus negative 3 for 4, 1 plus negative 2 for negative 1, and then you have 4 over 2, comma, negative 1 over 2, and you can simplify the 4 over 2 and get 2, comma, negative 1 over 2. We're going to do some practice with the slope formula. So for question 7, find the slope of a line with points 3, 8, and negative 2, 4. Answer choices are A, m equals 2 over 3, B, m equals 1 over 4, C, m equals 2, D, m equals 4 over 5. And so you'd write out the slope formula, which is m equals y sub 1 minus y sub 2 over x of 1 minus x of 2. And for the y sub 1, you would plug in the 8, y sub 2, you'd plug in the 4, x of 1, you'd plug in the 3, x of 2, you'd plug in the negative 2. So then, next step would be 8 minus 4, which would leave you with 4, and then 3 minus negative 2, which would give you 5, and then you're left with the slope of m equals 4 over 5. Find the slope of a line with points negative 5, 2, and 2, 6. So you can pause the video here if you need time to solve it. You would start off by writing the slope formula again, and for y sub 1, you would have to plug in the 2 here. And then for y sub 2, you'd have to plug in the 6. For x of 1, you'd have to plug in the negative 5. And x of 2, you'd plug in the 2. And you're left with that. And you can do 2 minus 6 for negative 4, negative 5 minus 2 for negative 7. And those negatives would cancel out, leaving you with a slope of m equals 4 over 7. Find the slope of a line with points negative 6, negative 8, and 9, 1. For this one, we were given answer choices of A, m equals 3 over 5, B, m equals y over 7, C, m equals 3, and D, m equals 1 over 3. You can pause the video here if you need time to solve it. So again, start off by writing the slope formula. And then for the y sub 1, you would have to plug in the negative 8. Y sub 2, you'd have to plug in the 1. X of 1, you'd have to plug in the negative 6. And then x of 2, you'd have to plug in the 9. And the next step would be doing negative 8 minus 1 for negative 9, and then negative 6 minus 9, which would give you negative 15. And then you can simplify this and get rid of the negatives, which would leave you with a slope of m equals 3 over 5. Find the slope of a line with points 4, 9, and 1, 2. You can pause the video here if you need time to solve it. Okay, so again, start off by writing the slope formula. And then next, you'd want to plug in the 9 for y sub 1, the 2 for y sub 2, and for the x of 1, you'd want to plug in the 4, x of 2, you'd want to plug in the 1. And the last step is doing 9 minus 2, which would give you 7, over 4 minus 1, which would give you 3, and you're left with a slope of m equals 7 over 3.